The desert night was alive with the sounds of crickets and the distant howl of coyotes. The air was cool, and the vast expanse of the desert seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. A blanket of stars twinkled above, casting an eerie glow on the dirt road ahead. The Milky Way was clearly visible, a river of light in the inky black sky. I was driving back from a visit to my grandmother, my headlights cutting through the darkness. The reservation was quiet, almost too quiet. The only sound was the hum of my engine and the occasional rustle of the wind. As I rounded a bend, I noticed something strange in the middle of the road. It appeared to be a large, dark figure. My heart began to race as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. I slowed down, my pulse quickening. The figure was hunched over, its back to me. It seemed to be moving slightly, as if it was doing something on the ground. As I got closer, it slowly turned its head. Two glowing eyes pierced the darkness, sending a shiver down my spine. The eyes were unnaturally bright, almost as if they were reflecting some unseen light. Fear gripped me as I realized what I was seeing. I had heard the stories since I was a child. Stories of creatures that could change shape, creatures that were neither fully human nor fully animal. This was no ordinary animal. This was a skinwalker. The tales of these beings were deeply rooted in Navajo culture, and they were always spoken of with a mix of fear and reverence. Frozen in terror, I could only watch as the creature rose to its full height. It was tall and gaunt, covered in what looked like matted fur. Its limbs were unnaturally long, and its movements were jerky and unsettling. The stench of decay filled my nostrils as it took a step towards my truck. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, the engine roaring to life. The tires kicked up dust as I sped away, my heart pounding in my chest. The last thing I saw in my rearview mirror were those glowing eyes, fixed on me with chilling intensity. They seemed to follow me, burning into my memory. I didn't stop driving until I reached the safety of my home. Even then, the fear lingered. I locked all the doors and windows, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. The memory of that night, the chilling encounter with the Skinwalker, has stayed with me ever since. It's a story I rarely share, but one that I can never forget. It was a stark reminder of the darkness that lurked at the edges of our world, a darkness that whispered of ancient evils and terrifying possibilities. The encounter left me with a deep respect for the mysteries of the desert and the ancient stories that still hold power today. I grew up listening to the stories of my grandfather, a respected elder in our community. His tales were more than just entertainment. They were a bridge to our past, a way to connect with our ancestors and their wisdom. He would gather us around him, his voice low and mesmerizing, as he recounted the legends and lore passed down through generations of time. Each story was a thread in the rich tapestry of our heritage. One story that left an indelible mark on me was his own encounter with the Skinwalker. It was a tale that sent shivers down our spines and made us huddle closer to the fire. He spoke of a time when he was a young man traveling alone on horseback through the Choska Mountains. The rugged terrain was both beautiful and treacherous, a place where one could easily lose their way. It was a moonless night, the only light coming from the stars overhead. The darkness was so profound that it felt like a living entity, wrapping around him like a shroud. As he rode, he noticed he was being followed. The sensation was subtle at first, a prickling at the back of his neck. At first he dismissed it as a coyote or a stray dog. After all, the wilderness was full of such creatures, and they often trailed travellers out of curiosity. But the feeling of unease persisted. It was an instinctual fear, a primal warning that something was not right. He urged his horse faster, but whatever was following him kept pace. The faster he went, the closer it seemed to get. He could hear its heavy breathing, smell the stench of decay that seemed to cling to it. The air grew thick with dread. Then he saw them, two glowing eyes like embers in the darkness, steadily approaching. They were not the eyes of any animal he knew. He knew then that he was being stalked by something evil. The realization hit him like a cold wave, freezing his blood. Fear lent speed to his flight. His heart pounded in his chest as he pushed his horse to its limits. He rode through the night, not stopping until he reached the safety of his village. The journey felt like an eternity, each moment stretched by terror. My grandfather never forgot that night. It was etched into his memory, a constant reminder of the unseen dangers that lurked in the shadows. It was a reminder, he said, that the stories were not just stories. They were lessons meant to teach us about the world and its hidden perils. They were warnings, echoes of a dark and dangerous reality that existed just beyond the veil of our perception, a reality that we would do well to heed and respect. For years I dismissed the stories as mere folklore, the product of overactive imaginations and the darkness of the desert night. Tales of strange creatures and eerie sounds were just that. Tales, I thought. As a park ranger, I prided myself on being a man of science and reason, someone who relied on facts and evidence rather than myths and legends. But my skepticism was profoundly shaken one unforgettable evening while patrolling the remote canyons near the San Juan River, a place known for its rugged beauty and isolation. It was a still night, the air heavy with the scent of sagebrush and the silence almost deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. I was driving along a deserted stretch of road, my headlights cutting through the darkness when I heard it. A howl unlike anything I had ever heard before. A sound that seemed to come from the depths of the earth. It was a chilling sound, mournful and full of malice, echoing through the canyon walls, as if the very rocks were amplifying its eerie tone. I stopped my truck, my hand instinctively reaching for my radio, my heart pounding in my chest. As I listened, the hair on the back of my neck stood on end, a primal fear taking hold of me. The howl was getting closer, moving with an unnatural speed that defied logic. Then I saw it. A large canine creature darted across the road in front of me, its form illuminated briefly by my headlights. But it wasn't a coyote or a wolf. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity, and its movements were too fluid, too deliberate, almost as if it were aware of my presence. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity, and its movements were too fluid, too deliberate, almost as if it were aware of my presence. I watched in disbelief as it vanished into the darkness, leaving me questioning everything I thought I knew. I knew then that I had witnessed something unexplainable, something that defied rational explanation and challenged my understanding of the natural world. The stories I had once dismissed as mere folklore suddenly seemed all too real, their details now hauntingly vivid in my mind. The memory of that night, of the chilling howl that seemed to pierce my very soul, still sends shivers down my spine. It was a night that changed me, a night that made me realize that some mysteries are beyond our comprehension,